much for joining us today. My name is Melanie Heath, and I am the Strategy Director for Participation at the Lumina Foundation. And I'm really excited to share with you our new initiative, which we're calling the Great Admissions Redesign. So this is the information webinar for that initiative. And I'm going to walk through kind of why we're doing this, what the application will look like, and then at the end, we will reserve time to answer questions. So if you do have a question, please don't use the chat, but use the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. So why are we looking at the Great Admissions Redesign? For many of you, I know that these numbers aren't new, but since the pandemic began, we've lost over 1 million enrollments in bachelor's degree programs. This drop has been especially pronounced among students of color and Pell eligible students. The pandemic also caused a lot of our admissions processes to be rethought. So we do now know that test optional is now the norm, and 80% of colleges are not requiring the SAT or ACT. So what this means is not only are the variables for admission changing, we also know that the student information that institutions get is different now too, because many institutions kind of purchase lists of students for recruitment from SAT and ACT. So that has been a fundamental shift as well. And then, of course, the recent SCOTUS decision that banned race-conscious admissions practices has forced many institutions to re-examine their current admissions processes, even if they didn't practice race-conscious admissions. And so all of these kind of conditions have come together to create this unique window of opportunity that we find ourselves in to really reconsider how we are reaching prospective students and getting them to enroll in our institutions. I think one other thing that, just to take us up a level, when I think about college access, I think about how many barriers are outside of the control of higher education. So student basic needs, K-12 preparation, mental health challenges that happen in high school and secondary. It feels like there's little that higher education can actually do for that. But admissions, onboarding, recruitment, enrollment, financial aid, a lot of that is under our own control. And so what we're trying to do with the Great Admissions Redesign is really think about how to make these processes that are under our control better. And by better, I mean simpler, more streamlined, more equitable, and more innovative. So you'll see this a couple times during the presentation, but I wanted to let you know that we do have a landing page for this initiative. It is luminafoundation.org/admissions-redesign. If you have questions that are specific to your own institution or your own system, project, or individual context, please email admissionsredesign@luminafoundation.org. We are very closely monitoring that, and we will answer any very specific questions that you might have. The last note is this webinar will be recorded. It will be emailed to everyone who has registered for this webinar, and it will also be up on that same landing page at the top. So it will be accessible. Here's what we hope to do today. So we want to talk about kind of what is Lumina looking for in applications? What are the principles that we're really hoping to see? We'll go over eligibility, the different funding types. We'll talk about the use of funds, so how you can and can't use them. We'll talk about the timeline, how to apply, some highlights from the application, and then we'll get questions from you and we will answer those as well. So these are the principles that Lumina is looking for in your application. We're looking for an admission innovation that increases opportunity for students who've been historically marginalized by our higher education systems. We're looking for simplicity, and we'll talk more about what I mean when I say simplicity. And we're also looking for innovation, so something that is a fundamentally different way of thinking about how to onboard students. So let's dive into each of these. When we think about opportunity, we do know that simpler admission systems are more equitable and more complicated admission systems are less equitable. And that kind of makes sense, right? If you're thinking about the prior knowledge and social capital that students need sometimes to navigate the current system, it is almost overwhelming. And so I love this quote by Richard Reeves from the Brookings Institute that says, "Complexity is the friend of the privileged." So when we make our systems more complicated than they need to be, truly, in 2023, we're really disenfranchising students who have been historically underserved by higher education. So what we're looking for in your admissions innovation is a demonstrated focus on an intervention that aims to support students of color, low-income students, and first-generation students. We're also looking for simplicity in your admissions process design. So we use this kind of three-pronged definition of simplicity: automation, proactivity, and transparency. So we're looking for admissions innovations that limit the work or the action that prospective students must undertake to apply. In proactivity, we're looking for ways that students can be informed about their options before they apply, as well as a quick communication and effective communication with the applicant. And then for transparency, we're looking to eliminate the uncertainty in the process to the highest extent possible. We know that causes a lot of stress for students. And so the more that you can be clear and upfront about all of the ways they can interact with your institution, really adheres to the principles of simplicity. And then last, we're looking for innovation. So what this means for us is a unique or novel ways of automating processes, recruiting and admitting students, using data to create seamless processes for prospective students, or other things. We know that there's really nothing new under the sun, right? And so this could mean a fundamentally different process or policy, or an existing idea that is used in new or interesting ways. So we're really looking for an innovation in the admission space with this challenge. So I've gotten a couple emails about eligibility, and I wanted to just clear up a couple things. So these are the types of entities that are allowed, that we're allowing applications from. So one, a state agency or a quasi-public organization. Two, a state system of higher education that includes public nonprofit bachelor's granting universities or colleges. And lastly, an institutional group. So a group of 3 or more public or private nonprofit institutions that include at least one public or private nonprofit bachelor's granting institution. I think one thing that's important to note is we really are looking for pathways to bachelor's degrees with this challenge. And so if you are wanting to apply with a group of institutions, at least one of them needs to offer a bachelor's degree. Community colleges that offer bachelor's degrees are eligible to be included in there. What is not eligible are nonprofit institutions or other organizations. We're really looking to partner with the actual entities that will be implementing the innovation. So I hope that helps clear that up, but I'm happy to take more questions at the end. So a milestone, here's some milestones for this challenge. And I want to say we recognize that this is a pretty quick turnaround, but we also were intentional with building the application so as not to be overly burdensome. So this is doable. So the things we've already accomplished, we announced the challenge last week. We're doing the webinar right now. The deadline for applications is October 6th. The evaluation window is October 9th to the 17th. And then applicants will be notified of their standing either way on October 31st. So if you are a finalist for this challenge, you will need to fill out a more formal application through the Lumina Foundation. And we do request that that final proposal is submitted by the 10th of November. And then the final notification of those finalists will go out November 27th. So that is our anticipated timeline. But keep October 6th in mind. So now let's go over the funding types. So there's two types of funding types for this initiative. There's planning proposals and there's implementation proposals. So first, we're going to go over planning proposals. For planning proposals, we're really looking for applications from entities that are in the early stages of developing a vision for redesigned admissions, enrollment, or financial aid processes. What success looks like for us at the end of this is a strong implementation plan and a timeline for implementing that admissions innovation. We anticipate awarding up to 5 entities for grants of up to $100,000 each for the planning proposals. Those grants will operate on a 12-month grant period from January 2024 to December 2024. I think it's important to note too that we will be providing technical assistance as well as opportunities for peer learning in a cohort environment for these planning grant awardees. So there will be lots of ways that you can learn together and come together to support each other throughout this planning process. And the second one is an implementation proposal. So for implementation proposals, we're really looking for applicants who have piloted efforts or who have the quote unquote table set. So all of the data infrastructure is there, everything's there. They just need resources to enhance, improve, expand, or speed up implementation. For us, success looks like an end of the grant period with a tangible policy and practice change and evidence of effectiveness that can serve as a model for others to learn and follow from. We anticipate awarding up to 3 entities for grants of $500,000 to $750,000. And the grant period is longer, so it's a 23-month grant period from January 24 to November 25. A couple notes about the use of funds. Any funds that the challenge awardees receive should be spent on strategic investments that fundamentally reimagine admissions, enrollment, or financial aid processes. A couple examples of what that could look like, but this is certainly not exhaustive. There's many other ways to spend these funds, but just to give you a couple ideas, we're looking at spending on data infrastructure, staffing to build new systems or processes, convening project teams or other stakeholders, hiring consultants, or developing new marketing or collateral materials. What it can't include and what Lumina dollars can't be spent on are scholarships or stipends for students or lobbying or election related activities. So they must be explicitly spent on the admissions innovation that you're going to be working on. Another plug for the website, luminafoundation.org/admissions-redesign. The application will be available on the website after this webinar. And so it will open there. You will apply and submit on the website. So it will be fully electronic. A couple highlights for the application. You will need the EIN or tax ID number for each entity in the project. So if you are going to be submitting an application with a group of institutions, each of the institutions in your group, you will need the EIN or tax ID number for each of them. So just be ready for that. You will also need to attach a process map of current and future state for the desired intervention. Just a note about that, we're not necessarily looking for a complicated or fancy map. We are talking about simplicity here. But this will give our review panel a good idea of what it is, of the area of friction in your process that you've identified, and then what you're hoping your admissions innovation will do to remove that friction. So please know that that will need to be also attached to your application. A couple things to know. Unfortunately, the application does not save, so you will have to fill it out in a single session. If you refresh the page, your work will be lost. And if your application was submitted successfully, you'll see two things. So you will get a confirmation screen that says, thank you for your submission. And then the main contact, who we're calling the project director in the application, will also receive a confirmation email. All right, there's a lot of text here, and I hope y'all will bear with me on this, but I wanted to show you the actual application questions for each funding type. These are the ones for the planning proposal. The next slide will be the ones for the implementation proposal. There's a lot of overlap between the two, but I wanted to kind of talk through each of these questions and let you hear kind of our reasoning of why we're asking each of these. So for the planning proposal, first, we want you to describe the problem, barrier, or place of friction in your current admissions, enrollment, or financial aid process that this plan would address. So this is really just, what is it you want to fix within your current process? We want to know that you have a clear understanding of the problem and that your proposal would clearly address that problem. 2, explain how the proposed project will increase educational opportunity for students of color, students from low-income families, and first-generation college students. So this goes back to the principle of opportunity. So we're really looking for admissions innovations that are focused on increasing opportunity for historically marginalized populations. And we want to know that you've thought about that when you are planning this admissions innovation. So show us your thinking here. Show us what it is that you're really hoping to do for these student populations. 3, how will the proposed project reduce complexity in admissions and enrollment, specifically regarding kind of the way that we define it, which is automation, proactivity, and transparency. So we really want you to address each of these prongs. So automation, proactivity, and transparency. How is it that you're focused on simplifying admissions or financial aid or enrollment through each of these prongs, and speak to each of them? We're looking for a well thought out answer for how you're going to decomplexify your process. And then 4, explain how this is a fundamentally new or reimagined way of admitting and enrolling students in higher education. So this goes back to the innovative thinking that we're looking for. How is it that this is different than what you've seen or what your colleagues are doing or what you're doing? And how is it going to kind of could be a model for others to implement as well? So that's the innovation question. Question 5 is really about your kind of entity's readiness to actually execute on something like this. So we want to hear you describe the capacity that your entity has. And by entity, I mean the state agency or state system or group of institutions. So describe your entity's capacity to execute innovative policies and practices. And how do you plan to develop your implementation plan and build the support of needed stakeholders? We know that it is really complicated to simplify something, and it is not easy. And so what we're looking for is an answer that shows you've thought through how you're going to bring people along and actually execute on this. And maybe an example of how you've done it before, so that we know that you are a proven entity that can execute on these innovative practices that we're looking for. And then number 6 is really about how you want to use the grant funds. We're not looking for a detailed budget or anything like that, but we are looking for some thought into what you actually plan to use the funds for. And then why do you want to use the funds that way? What is the reasoning behind using the funds in that specific way? And then we've told you a little bit about what success looks like at the end of the grant period for us. So for us, for a planning proposal, we're really looking for a plan at the end that is very clearly articulated and ready to move forward. But we also want to know what success looks like for you. I think that feels important because there might be kind of a different dimension that we haven't thought of yet. So that's the planning proposal application. I'm going to go into the implementation proposal application questions. They're mostly the same. There's just a couple things that are slightly different. And so I'm going to highlight those differences. So 1, describe your admissions innovation. Has it been piloted? And then if so, what were the impacts on post-secondary participation rates? If it has been piloted, we would like to see data around the efficacy of it. And even if it wasn't as, earth-shattering as you had hoped, I think it's still important to show that and then show us kind of what you anticipate changing or why the data looks the way it does. If it hasn't been piloted, I want to see how it is that the table has been set, quote unquote. So what is it that you have done to make sure that you're kind of ready to run if you get resources? The next 3 questions, 2 through 4, are the same. Question 5 is, again, getting to that readiness question. It's just slightly different. So what history of success has your entity shown in executing innovative policies and practices that include a well thought out implementation plan and the support of needed stakeholders? So either in your work to get the table set or in your pilot, how have you brought people together and executed on something that's fundamentally hard and substantially different? We're really looking for that evidence there. And then question 6 is, how would you strategically use the grant funds to implement or expand your admissions innovation, and why? Again, this is something that just speaks to how you want to use the budget and why you want to use your dollars that way. We just want, again, it doesn't need to be a really, detailed budget, but we want to know that you have some idea of how you would use the dollars. And then again, what does success look like at the end of the grant period? So for us, for an implementation proposal, we're really looking to fund something that will become an exemplar for the field, something that can be used as a blueprint for other entities to implement, right? But we also want to give you the opportunity to talk about what success looks like for you. And I think that is the end of that long presentation. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, if you have questions that are really specific to your own institution or system or project, please email admissionsredesign@luminafoundation.org. Please go to luminafoundation.org/admissions-redesign to learn more about the challenge. And again, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website for you to review. So now I'm going to stop sharing and open up the Q&A section. So give me a minute here. And I'm just going to go through the Q&A. So I have a question from Jean. Is this limited to undergraduate admission only? Yes. So it is limited to undergraduate admission only, and we are looking specifically for pathways to bachelor's degrees. So just an important clarification there. Perry asked, is there a scenario where a nonprofit or for-profit can be eligible? If not, can a nonprofit or for-profit partner with an institution to apply for this grant? I'm guessing you mean a nonprofit or for-profit organization that is not an institution or state system or state agency. And if so, no, we're not looking for partners with organizations that are outside of the ones that would actually implement the admissions innovation. We're really looking to partner with the state system, state agency, or the actual institutions that would implement this innovation. So Daniel asked, on the topic of innovation, would using ideas that have worked elsewhere in a new context or in a new way be considered innovative for the purpose of this grant? Yes, absolutely. If an innovation has worked elsewhere, but you need to tweak it for your specific context, and that on itself can be innovative. So yes, that would absolutely be considered innovative. Again, it doesn't need to be something that has never been thought of before, but we are looking for something that is a fundamentally new or different way of thinking about it. Paul asks, saw the recording will be emailed out. Can that include a PDF of the PowerPoint? Yes, we can definitely include that on either in the email, likely it will be on our website. So we'll make sure that the PowerPoint is posted on the website. Sarah asks, can you please clarify this eligibility requirement? One proposal submission per state higher ed system institutional cluster. Yeah, so I'm sorry, that was worded strangely. But what we're not looking for instance, an institutional cluster of 3 to apply, and then the higher ed system that they belong to also submit an application for the same innovation, right? If there's fundamentally different admissions, enrollment, or financial aid innovations, you can submit 2 different applications, but really kind of the context is we're wanting different applications per innovation, if that makes sense. Another question about a for-profit provides financing. And again, no, we're really not looking to partner with third-party entities like that. Okay, how in-depth is the final proposal? The final proposal will, so that's a good question. It is a quick timeline. We're anticipating the bulk of the questions for the final proposal will be answered through this application, but it does include additional documentation for your entity. So, and only for the entity that will actually receive the funds, if that makes sense. So we will need, the last 2 years of audited financials, information about your board makeup, those sorts of things. But we do anticipate that 10 days will be enough time for that. If you do need more time, we're willing to work with you on that. We certainly don't want time to be the barrier for this, but we're hoping to expedite it as well. Would planning proposal grantees be eligible for a subsequent implementation grant? That is a really good question too. And would there be preferential status to the planning proposal grantees? So we are not guaranteeing that there are any funds available after this grant period for planning proposal grantees. So I can't really speak to that. It would really depend on the project, I would say. But I do think that what we're hoping to do is set the planning proposal grantees up in a way so that they would be able to implement the admissions innovation, possibly without additional dollars or with substantial enough resources that they could sustain it on their own. Tabitha asks about undergrad focused. Yes, this is undergraduate focused admissions. Marcella asked, for the pre-proposal, do we need to include citations and research-backed findings when explaining benefits of our proposals? Can we leave without citations where the benefits are well researched and known? You're okay without citations. It does not need to be like APA cited. If there is something that you're claiming, it would be helpful, particularly if there's a something really specific in your own environment or state context. It would be helpful for us to know kind of where that information came from. But if something is researched and well known, you do not need to include citations there. Sheila asks, will you consider scholarship redesign as part of the proposal? Scholarships are part of the admissions process. Yes, so financial aid is one of the ways that one of the options for what we're calling an admissions innovation. But you're right, scholarships are part of the admissions process, and we would consider proposals that fundamentally shift or alter or simplify the scholarship, either eligibility, notification, packaging process, any of those things. Yes, absolutely. Dominic asks if the scope for this initiative incorporates retention. No, it does not. So this initiative is focused strictly on admitting and enrolling students. It is not focused on kind of the next steps there, retention or persistence. Provide the ability to download the applications. Yes. So we do have the applications currently, or the application questions currently on our website under a dropdown that's called application questions. So that is currently available. We will also be sure to post this slide deck on the website as well, so you'll be able to review those too. May Stevens asks, what is the indirect cost rate honored? Is there a required match? There is no required match. And your application or your budget cannot include more than 20% of kind of overhead or indirect costs that way. So please, be sure to note that a more detailed budget will be in the final. You'll be required to submit a more detailed proposal in the final proposal stage. So not for this initial application. So Melanie asks, would a financial aid communication tool qualify? There were references to financial aid in some places, but some seem to be exclusively admissions and enrollment focused. Yeah, great question. So yes, financial aid innovations do qualify for even though this says the Great Admissions Redesign behind me, I am including financial aid, enrollment, admission. So kind of all of the ways that students connect to and are onboarded to an institution would qualify for this challenge. Adrian asks, is it possible to apply for both the planning and implementation grants? Yes, you certainly can. I'm guessing you would have two innovations that you're looking to support. And for that purposes, if they are two different innovations, you can do one for the planning and one for implementation. If it's the same innovation, you can only apply for one, if that makes sense. But yes, the same entity can apply to both. Let's see. Trisha asks, at what point would you need a formal budget from us? So we will need a formal budget if you're selected as a finalist. When at that point, when you submit a final application through our grants management system at the Lumina Foundation. So if it takes a while to get to kind of work through that at your institution, might be good to get started. But yeah, that you don't need the formal budget for this application. Someone asked if a private nonprofit university that offers bachelor's degrees can apply for the implementation application alone, or do they need to have a group of 3? So no, you would need to have a group of 3, at least 3 institutions. What we're really looking for here is the scale. We do know that admissions innovations can't be solved institution by institution. The data infrastructure underneath it, the connection to K-12 data systems, it's all too complicated and big to do institution by institution when we're really looking for structural systemic change across the country, right? So that's why we've said it needs to be a group of at least 3 institutions. We really are looking for that scale. So Michelle asks, to clarify on third-party providers, if we have piloted an initiative and that includes a third-party system, and we have plans to strengthen the relationship with that third-party system, can we, a state agency, include the third party as a partner in the submission, or should we submit as an agency and reference the system we use? Great question, Michelle. You should submit as a state agency, as you would be the one that would actually receive the funds. And then you can clarify within your application that you intend to partner with a third party system. So I hope that makes sense. If there's more context there that would be helpful to talk through, feel free to email the admissions redesign at luminafoundation.org and we could talk more about that. So a question about the number of grants. So we anticipate awarding up to 5 planning grants. Those are the $100,000 year-long grants. For the implementation grants, we anticipate awarding up to 3. That's for a 23-month period during for calendar year 24 through November 25. And I think I said up to 3, and those will be for amounts between $500,000 and $750,000 for each of those implementation grants. Would you fund, a question from Allison, would you fund a research study of a new innovative initiative to ensure the initiative has the desired outcome as intended for underrepresented students? That is a great question, Allison. We do anticipate funding research and evaluation for the implementation grant recipients. So we are looking to ensure that whatever innovation has been implemented does have the intended outcome to support the student populations that we're looking for. So students of color, low-income students, and first-generation students. So we will be partnering with an evaluator or a researcher for the implementation grants to get a really good idea of not just the conditions that are necessary to actually implement an innovation of that scope, and not just, what is the process, what data systems needed to be connected underneath, but also how did it work? What does it look like? Who is it impacted? Is it actually impacting the underrepresented student populations that we're looking for? So great question. Yes, we absolutely understand that. Bill asks, are the three prongs, automation, proactivity, and transparency, weighted equally, or will the grant review board weigh them based on the overall presentation? We are asking that you address each of the prongs, so automation, proactivity, and transparency within that question. They will be weighted equally, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need like a really comprehensive answer for each one. We just want you to see, or we want to see that you have really thought through the three prongs of simplicity as we're defining it. Let's see. I got a question about, can a public university partner with community college with multiple campuses? So we're really looking for three separate institutions. So a public university can partner with two community colleges, those separate institutions. But it does need to be three. So if a university partnered with a community college that has multiple sites or multiple campuses, that would not meet the qualification for three. So we're really looking for three. Yvette asks, is it okay to include an advising component as part of the innovative admission strategy and our subgrants to partners available? So yes, it is okay to include an advising component, absolutely. If you think there is advising, as part of a holistic strategy, I think that is absolutely great. And if you want to include subgrants in your application to partners, you would just need to clearly express in the application who you intend to partner with and why. But that would be up to the project director. I have a question about our 10 college community college district does offer some bachelor's degrees. Are we eligible for the Great Admissions Redesign Grant, just including our 10 independently accredited colleges? Yes. So as long as there is a pathway to a bachelor's degrees within your application, you are eligible to apply. Are innovative approaches for adult students in particular being considered? Not in particular. We're really looking for improvements in the process of, connecting students with college. And so, students broadly defined, the kind of unit of intervention that we're looking at here is not necessarily a specific age of student, but it's the process itself. We do operate under the assumption that a simpler process is better for all student types. If there is something particularly innovative about the way that you want to connect with adult students, I think that would make a great application, and I would really love to see that. So I got a question from Dawn. If there was a collaboration with a state entity, could we still have 3 nonprofit universities involved? Yes, absolutely. There could be kind of a larger body of work there. So I think that would depend on who you wanted to have the project director be. If the project director was the state entity, or if the project director was one of the universities, that would then serve as the lead. But that kind of cluster of folks should absolutely be involved. Okay, let's see. I have another question about the timeline. So I'm going to pull up my slides real quick just to reshare that. Okay, so here is the timeline again. And we will put this on our website, this deck on our website. So again, understand that it is a quick turnaround. We're trying to make it as seamless as possible so that, or as simple as possible, right? So that folks will be able to meet these deadlines. So all of the application materials should be submitted by October 6th at midnight Eastern time. The application review committee will evaluate the applications that we receive from October 9th to the 17th. So that is our own internal window. Everyone who has applied will be notified of their standing on Halloween on October 31st. So you will either get a notification that says, you know, thank you for submitting, you are not continuing in the process, or thank you for submitting, you've been selected to submit a final proposal. If you receive one of those, you will get notified of kind of how to submit the final proposal through our grants management system, which is called Flux. And then you will have that kind of 2-week period to submit your final proposal. The final proposal mostly includes, the same things that this application does, but it does include a budget. It will include, like I said, those audited financials and a few other paperwork items. And then you should have them submitted by November 10th. And I'll just reiterate again, if there is more time that's needed to get the appropriate signatures or everything, we are willing to work with you. We're just really hoping to do the best we can to stick to this timeline. This allows us to be on track for the January 1st, or not January, an early January start date for the grants. So really would appreciate work to try to make it work by November 10th, but we would work with you on that. And then the final notification for those individuals who were invited to submit a final proposal will be sent out. We're anticipating it will be sent out November 27th. So you should know kind of the status of your final proposal that you submitted there. So again, we will be sure that that information is made public as well. Okay, I saw a few more questions come in, so let me see. Someone asked if there are word counts or limits to the answers. There are not. Please don't submit 5-page answers for each of the questions. But we wanted to give you the space to adequately answer the question. Okay, Shreel asked, admission to an AA or AS degree that was part of a 2+2 agreement would qualify. Admission to an AAS terminal degree wouldn't be. So I think what we're looking for is a pathway to a bachelor's degree. So I think an admissions innovation could include students who are the first time full-time student at that institution, let's say a community college. It could include a transfer innovation. So admitting students who are graduating from a community college or who are ready to transfer to a 4-year. It could certainly include looking at transfer a new way, I think would be really welcome. We would love to see a new way to admit students to bachelor's degree programs in a university setting from a community college. So just wanted to clarify that is also would make a wonderful application for this challenge. I got a question about, is there an opportunity to include attachments, videos, or other collateral to illustrate the innovation? The only opportunity to attach something in this application is that process map that we're asking for. So current state, future state. If you have already piloted an innovation, we're looking for prior state, future state, if that makes sense. But that's the only place that we're allowing attachments. So I got a question: if a four-year institution was working with a company and this company was processing applications on the institution's behalf, could this be considered if the company was working with other institutions? So trying to read between the lines of the question, you would still need to show that you particularly at your institution are working with at least two other institutions on an admissions innovation. Simply contracting with a separate entity that does application or supports your applications is not sufficient. It would need to be at least three institutions there. If a public institution has two campuses they want to include in the grant proposal, would they need to find a third institution to partner with? Yes. So again, we're looking for three distinct institutions that are within that institutional cluster. We aren't looking for a single institution with two campuses or even three campuses. That does not fit their criteria. We're looking for three different institutions. So three universities, a university, and at least two different community colleges. All of those would apply for this. I got a question: could a private nonprofit institution of higher education partner with two high school districts, or does it have to be two additional institutions of higher education? So no, it would have to be two additional institutions of higher education. Kate asked, how many applicants do you see entering the final stage? We are looking for about those numbers. So up to 5 for the planning grants and up to 3 for the implementation grants, we anticipate will enter the final stage of this process. Michelle asks, can a transfer pathway that includes a high school as one of the 3 institutions? So no, we're really looking for 3 separate institutions. If you are not a state institution, but a private nonprofit university, the only option would be to partner with 2 other institutions for a total of 3. Yes, that is true. If you are a private nonprofit university that is not part of a system, then yes, you would need to partner with at least 2 other institutions. And let me see. I think several of the other questions seem fairly specific to your own context or institution. So I really welcome, and I also know we have just a couple minutes left. So thank you for bearing with me while I answer those questions. But please email admissions redesign at luminafoundation.org if your question was not answered today. We will do our very best to answer those in a timely manner. And we will get back to you as quick as we can. But I really appreciate everyone jumping on for this informational webinar today. I hope it was informative and helpful. Just another quick plug for luminafoundation.org/admissions-redesign to learn more about this initiative. And I'm really excited to see your applications and to see what we can do together to make college more accessible and more simpler to navigate to.